Polo from NRD. Right here we have a 04 Mitsubishi Evolution, obviously, 4G63 motor. The car was actually running good, but it was smoking quite a bit, so the valve seals look like they're gone. We're going to replace the head and also add a Kiggly HLA. This is just a stock one. This is a stock head, obviously. What we started doing was we actually started by taking the valve cover off, taking any kind of accessories off, the intake pipe, battery, your essentials, and then after what we did, right now it's time to zero. You want to make sure this is top dead center. Once the way you do that is you actually get a wrench onto your crankshaft pulley, which is on the bottom. We use a 7/8 wrench.
Way too dark.
Yeah. And then we loosened all the bolts with the exhaust manifold. When you do that, make sure you start on the outside and work your way toward the middle. Don't do the, well, some people like to start inside it. Either way, same thing with the intake manifold. Intake manifold's a little trickier because there's more stuff. There's two bolts holding down the rail. You're gonna find there's some miscellaneous stuff like wires you're gonna have to disconnect, just so you can get to the bolts on the intake manifold. Once the intake manifold has been unbolted, you can actually go and start taking the accessories off. Some people say you can just take the cam gear off. I honestly wouldn't, just because the tensioner is always under high pressure. You got to put a rod through the tensioner pulley. Well, the tensioner spring, I should say. Well, we got the whole turbo out, as you can see. This bad boy is out. That actually wasn't too bad. What I suggest is actually spraying PB Blaster like a week before you do the job. Every day, just keep spraying PB Blaster on these things and it'll come right out. Same thing with the intake manifold bolts. Those usually don't really need to spray it, but we do it anyway. Any kind of bolt that you see you're gonna have to take off and it's rusted, I would definitely do that a week before you're gonna tackle the job. Now, when you you're gonna have to take the time belt off, depending if you're gonna change the gears or stuff. We had to take the belt off. So what we ended up actually doing is we took the pulleys off, serpentine belt pulley, harmonic balancer, all that. Before you take your serpentine belt off, make sure you loosen the power steering pulley. If you do that, you're gonna have a hard time taking that power steering pulley out. So that serpentine belt will serve as it'll hold everything in place for you. Next, if you can see back here, took the intake manifold off. Now, if you notice, you have two oversized studs on the outside, and then you have regular sized bolts on the inside. Those usually aren't too hard to take off. It's just kind of a pain to get to the bottom ones. It's not really rust, it's just a pain to get the tool in there. Next thing that you can also see is also this support. This holds the intake manifold on from kind of warping down. These two studs, well, actually they were bolts, but on this car they were quite rusted actually. This one's not too bad. We're actually able to reach in this way. This one was kind of a pain. We actually had to kind of lean into these hoses to break this bolt loose. Once that's out, disconnect all the hoses and wires. Make sure you remember what order they went in. But you disconnect all those. I like to not mess with these little plastic things, so I actually just take the bolts off and keep them nice and safe to the side. Don't hit them. They're actually really expensive, especially this is your map sensor. I think it's like $120 just to get a new one, so be careful with that. Next thing is also, things like this, throttle cable. Just put everything to the side, that way you can take the intake manifold off. Next, if you notice, is we're gonna actually take the head off once everything's nice and free. Just before you do start yanking on anything, make sure you do have everything disconnected. Make sure there's no bolts or sometimes brackets. Just make sure everything's off. It's just the head. After that, it's always good to have a friend to help you, so you actually have both sides coming off. Depending if you have bolts in, this will be a lot easier. This car actually has studs, so it's kind of hard. We're trying to keep the studs in, but it looks like we might have to take the studs out to remove the head. All right.
Wow, so head gasket.
Alright, so as you can see, we got the new head on. Already came with oversized cams, the adjustable cam gears. When you put these on, make sure the dowel pin is up, which it is on this one. It's kind of hard to see, but the dowel pin is always pointing up. That is where top dead center is. We could also do, I mean, we had the privilege of comparing this head with our old head, and you can actually compare the lobes, and that's how you know if it's top dead center. Next, obviously, we got to do timing belt, put the intake manifold on, exhaust manifold back on. But just make sure everything is on there. Also, when you're dropping this in, make sure it's level. Talk about balance shaft. And also make sure that the head gasket doesn't get pinched anywhere. Next is, let's see, we did ARP head studs, so we had studs that we had to watch out for. If you're just doing bolts, you could just put it on and put the bolts on. The pattern for this actually starts on the inside, and it's almost like a wheel. You start on the inside, work your way diagonally across. Here, there, and there. Never start on the outside. The torque specs, don't know off the top of my head, but I do believe it's around 80 to 90, but I'll definitely double check on that. Also, if you notice, we got ourselves a Kiggly HLA. Highly recommend it, especially for track cars, just because our 4G63 floods the oil into the head when you step on the gas. That'll definitely help it keep oil in the crank. And that's it. Next, we'll cover the timing belt procedure and everything else. Alright, we have the new head on. We put the head gasket on, obviously. We actually put the intake manifold gasket and the intake manifold back on, or we're starting to. Now, what I would suggest is, as someone's doing the intake manifold, once this is bolt, the head is on there, you have everything torqued down, so you can start doing the timing belt. Just be careful when you're doing the timing belt. I strongly suggest a timing belt tool. If you notice on the actual timing belt tensioner, the tensioner you have to compress again really slowly. You actually put it on one of these, put it on the vise, and you pretty much do like a half turn on the vise, compressing the tensioner about every 30 seconds. But now the tensioner itself, it's automatic. There's a bracket, and in order to actually move the pulley, there's actually 2 dots. You get yourself something like this. Some people make this. Some people are actually able to use, I guess they make pliers that are something like this. I just bought mine from J Racing. It's like 50 bucks. Comes with a bunch of other stuff, but this is mainly the tool that you need. After that, you can time everything. You can put the valve cover back on, and there's little timing marks here, here, and there's timing marks on the actual timing gear. Make sure the dowel pin is up. I know like this is adjustable cam gears. It has 2 spots for the dowel pin. Make sure the dowel pin is pointing up. That's how you know if your cam's right or not. Take this off. Next point, I'm gonna show you guys where the timing marks are on the bottom. So this, if you notice, we have a few timing marks. First one is actually right here. This one's down here. Everything, this one's not timed yet, but your first one is right here on your pulley, the little white mark, and then there's one on the block, it's a little triangle. These have to match up. Next one over here is back here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's actually a notch right in there. Let me see if I can point to it. It's right there. Let's see if I can get a light there. Right where that's going, there's going to be a notch. It's hard to see on camera, but in there's a notch, and there's a notch on the actual engine. Then next is down here. There's a belt, the balance shaft belt, and there's a notch on the side of the motor. Right here, those also have to match up. Now, before you time everything, you want to put everything 1 tooth back. So this is 1 tooth back, this is going to be 1 tooth back, that's going to be kind of 1 tooth, it's kind of hard to do on that one, but 1 tooth back, and then we go to the top.
this one's also going to be 1 tooth back. Now, if you notice, this one's actually 2 teeth right now because this isn't timed correctly, but this is going to be just pretty much 1 tooth back. Once you turn the timing belt, it'll actually fix itself. But just make sure everything lines up at the end. Once you turn it 3 times, everything should time up. All the tension should be good to go. But like I said, definitely get yourself one of those timing belt tools. Here's a better look at it. It's definitely worth getting. It's stable. It's not. It's definitely not cheap, but it's worth it from all the timing belt jobs done that I've done. So next, what we're gonna do is finalize the intake manifold. We're actually gonna finalize putting the exhaust manifold on. Just make sure everything is torqued. I know it's kind of hard. Just for this build, we weren't able to torque spec the intake manifold on, or we're probably not going to be able to do on the exhaust manifold on. But make sure everything's nice and snug, and try to get to as close as possible as you can. For anybody that needs to know, the head studs on this, you got to make sure you have the grease on there, and the order is usually in kind of like a diagonal order, where you start out tightening the middle bolts and working your way outward. Once you have that, you torque everything down 30, torque 60, and then you go again one more time to, I believe, 85 to 90. We usually, obviously you got to use a torque wrench for that. Try to use as little extensions as possible. I know it's really hard not to get an extension in there, but once we got that down, should be good to go. Okay, so as you can see, we have everything almost back together. We got the exhaust manifold back on, intake manifold back on, everything's on there. Everything is timed. We did check everything. You turn it 3 times and it should be back to TDC, top dead center. Just want to make sure you put the engine mount back on before we drop everything. One thing I do want to make sure you guys do is make sure that is bolted down. It's the little banjo bolt for the oil line. If you forget that, your turbo will go out pretty quickly. But we still have a little bit to go. Just got to wire pretty much a few more things, put the intercooler piping in, put the radiator in. But as you can see, it's definitely coming along. Just a few more things to do. After that, we're gonna fill up with oil, fill up with radiator fluid, and check the exhaust bearings. No, I'm just kidding. There's no exhaust bearings. And that's pretty much it. And then after that, I'm gonna do a first startup. Hopefully everything's okay. It does this. Like you need to. I still relearn. Go ahead, try it again.